Hello, internet friends, cats, kittens, crittens. I like crittens. I think I'm gonna go with
Kittens.
crittens. That one works out real well. I'm gonna work on that some more.
I
But
like that.
anyway, I'm Ben, also known as Metamongoose, over on the Crit Cats Discord. With me today for our fifth Tavern talk is my friend Sasha and my other friend BB, and we're gonna have some good times. Talking about plants. Fun with Flora is our topic for the evening. We're going to talk to you and amongst ourselves about how plants work in a D&D adventure, how they can be better used or utilized, monsters that are plant-based. Sometimes you just need a fun, weird monster because goblins are, a thing that everyone always fights, or cultists are always a thing that you always run across. But, maybe you want like a pile of sticks with teeth. That is an interesting shape that a party has to determine a new way to deal with that they hadn't planned on before because it doesn't follow all the rules of normal living creatures.
Which I
Um,
guess is a shambling mound, actually.
well, a shambling mound is one of those things.
This
Uh,
literally sticks with teeth.
um,
Goodness gracious.
your twig blights, your needle blights, things like that. Also, but yeah, things like that where you're just like, hey, I want to change it up. I'm tired of fighting all these fleshy monsters. Let's throw some plants into the mix.
Right?
But anyway, with that kind of laying things out, does anyone have a plant topic they want to go after first?
I mean, I could probably get my wonderful thing, my wonderful character that I always love talking about on a constant basis because I'm so proud of this character. Um, I can always talk about Noxia, who was
Okay.
in one of your Spelljammer games, who
Yes.
is very much a what I've a mushroom goblin essentially. And I've kind of debated on how I do her build, but my favorite thing about her, which a lot of my close friends and stuff know, is that she always gets high on mushrooms, like all the time, consistently. She is fantastic with this. She grows her own hallucinogenic mushrooms. She breeds her own hallucinogenic mushrooms, and she uses them to infuse them with different ales and alcohols and beers so people can get drunk and high at the same time.
And
She's
this is also how we, weirdly enough, got you into our Star Chaser
yes,
Spelljammer game as a guest appearance. Your character was introduced basically tripping on her own mushroom supply, having eaten an astral mushroom that teleported her
yes,
into space for a short period of time to hang out with the
yes.
party, and then when your high wore off, you warped back home.
It was even better because she was just like, oh. They're like, what? Bye. She's just gone. And they're like, she even real? Yeah, she fantastic. So I have I'm getting ready to do an overnight with her where I'm gonna have her as kind of the leading in. Where you, Ben, told me about this particular adventure similar to what I'm doing because I had no idea that even existed. All this other information came from my brain hole. I'm like, my character is trying to make a particular, like, new brew for the fall holiday and the fall festival stuff. And it's like particular ingredients that come from like big creatures, essentially. And it was a lot of fun. And then he goes, well, there's this thing that came out. And I was like, are you serious?
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of that, so here, I can actually show that off. So I collect a lot of old D&D stuff because I've been playing D&D for a very long time. And one of the adventures that I have run before that I found was really, really good in the plant department was an adventure from Dungeon Magazine 67 from the March April 1998 edition. It's called Witch's Brew, and the basics of it are pretty straightforward. It's mostly an interesting fetch quest adventure, but the impetus is there's a wizard. He wants to make a potion of plant control that he wants to sell to a wealthy merchant who's having a weird infestation of giant sundew plants on one of his more lucrative caravan routes that he wants to deal with. And he's like, I need some other plants from somewhere else. And he gives you this shopping list effectively. And it's got a whole bunch of weird plants. So they've got like baneberries. And they're like, hey, just so you know, baneberries look like this. They, they are weirdly dangerous, but I don't know why. You'll figure it out, I'm sure. But they also, they don't, once you harvest them, they only keep for about a week. So that part's like a clock on the adventure. Like the minute you harvest these, you only have so many days to get back to them, or else they're not good ingredients anymore. Which is a fun way to add plants as kind of like a timing mechanism to an adventure. Then he's like, hey, there's also this bog peat tar. Now, importantly, you have to harvest this in like utter dark, in the, let's see, what was it? Gathered under the light of a full moon. So this shouldn't be a problem because the full moon shows up in about 6 days. So once you get to your location 6 days away from here, or you have like 3 days to find and gather the tar when the full moon arrives. You have plenty of time to, get some full moonlight going. Now, if you have some enterprising players, arguably with the druid on board, they could cast moonlight, which would also solve that problem, but again, it's a timetable situation. Then it's like you need some root of the shrieking mandrake. In order to find it, you're gonna have to get some like bloodhounds to sniff it out, and then they shriek real loud and drive monsters crazy and animals crazy. So you're gonna want to wear some ear protection and make sure the hounds have ear protection. So when you go to the town, you have to find someone who has bloodhounds who will rent them to you to go find some mandrake root, and then you also have to take all of the appropriate precautions, or else there's going to be a problem when you try to harvest it. And then he's like, and then you need some deadly nightshade. I don't need it to kill people, I promise. It's for a plant control potion. But importantly, you can find it in like old cemeteries. The locals will probably direct you to like some ruins out in that area. But it has to be harvested in utter darkness, or it loses all of its magical properties. So you know that there's going to be a full moon for like the entire time the party is there. It has to be harvested at night in utter darkness, and they only have so many days to harvest all of these ingredients. So it becomes like a really weird logistical word problem of plants, trying to figure out like when the best time to go find each plant is. They have to go to the town, talk to a whole bunch of NPCs to figure out where to find the plants. And that's not even the wrinkle of the adventure. The wrinkle of the adventure is that this land is also like effectively property of a witch. And she doesn't like that there are adventurers showing up and stealing her stuff, and she has her goblin minions go out and like she susses out kind of what they're aiming for once they start harvesting like one or two things, and she sends out her goblin minions to go get the rest of the things and bring them back to her hut so that the party can't have them.
Then it's a race against some goblins.
Yes.
Right, so then it's a race against some goblins, and then you have to go fight the witch and get the stuff that she ended up stealing from you, if the goblins stole anything.
Oh man!
Like it's a whole mess, but it's all plant based, right? Like the call to adventure is go get some plants. The logistics and timetable behind the adventure are all like trying to match up when you got to harvest these plants, how you're gonna get them all collected, who you got to talk to find the plants. What special precautions you have to make to take care of each individual plant that you're trying to get. And then you got to fight a bunch of monsters who don't want you to have those plants.
Well, and then it also, like, it's one of those things where, like, as you were describing this to me, I was already picturing how, like, the map itself could even be built. Like, if it didn't exist already.
So there is a map.
Right. And so, like, but that's what I'm but what I immediately think, I was like, okay, well, the nightshade would have to be in a dark place that already doesn't get sun or moonlight.
Oh no.
You're not going to have a new moon.
It grows in a graveyard. But you have to harvest it at night in utter darkness.
Okay, so when you say utter darkness, moonlight and starlight doesn't count as light.
No, it does count as light.
So that's what I'm saying.
You have to put a blanket over you while you're harvesting it, or cast like the darkness spell and do it blind or something.
See, I was thinking, I was like, put it in the mausoleum or put it in like a cave underground, because then it's not receiving that light. So that gives you that.
Oh no, it's a plant. It needs light to grow.
Well, some plants don't. That's true. But like, it gives you that idea of like, well, because you can't have a new moon and a full moon that close to one another, and you gotta have the full moon for the other one, the bane, the
baneberries,
baneberries.
You need to harvest those, and you only have like 3 days after you arrive at the town to possibly harvest those.
So you're just like, so the blanket. I didn't even think about the blanket idea. See, that's I'm so automatically like, okay, well, flowers have to move. Apparently, obvious. They've got to get the U-Haul. Yeah. Why do we have to do the work? It's like didn't even cross my mind. That's so much funnier.
You have to remember, this was made like in second edition D&D times.
Right.
So like they do give the DM
fun.
like some suggestions of like hints to give the party, or if the party is like, or like a list of, if the party is feeling terribly creative and buys like a big bushel basket from the town and like sticks the halfling underneath it to harvest the nightshade. Let them do it. That's a good idea. Yeah, so the adventure does kind of feed the DM a little bit of like, if your party is feeling adventurous and does this, that's probably a good idea. Let them do it. Or if they want to go the magic route and cast like darkness or something, or if they come up with some other weird idea of how this works, entertain it for a while, because that's the fun of it.
That's amazing. That's so good.
But it's like, you have to go get the peat bog tar, but it's on a peat bog, and it's like, that ground isn't stable, so don't be heavy when you're walking across the peat bog, or you'll fall into brackish water.
Yeah, like a barbarian would have a bad time.
Yeah. And the bog tar is at like the bottom of the lake, so you have to like cut open the peat, peel it back, and then dive down to harvest it. And of course, there's probably monsters or something down there to stop you.
In this episode of D&D, the team does manual labor.
Right, but it's a lot of manual labor, and it's a lot of talking to people. And they've got like, this town has 26 locations, and every location potentially has people you can talk to give you hints of like where you can find materials, or like hire some dogs to go get some materials, or has like potentially wrong information because they just don't know. They might just lie to you because they don't know.
So good.
But yeah, no, this was a fun adventure, and when I heard that Sasha was running like a potion brewing collection adventure, but didn't really know what would be a good kind of way to go about that, I was like, I got you. I've got this adventure. Here's a link. Enjoy to your heart's content. Bend it however you want, but this is the way to do it.
I wanted to put certain mini games in there, and he goes, "This has mini games in it." I'm like, "Are you serious?"
Yeah, it has harvesting mini games.
Yes. I was like, I'm all for it.
That's so good. Yeah, and it's just like with the plant being the call to action, it's just like, then there's like the whole idea of your sentient plants also being your call to action. But through means you might not even realize, because then you have side characters that become the main reason to exist.
It's funny you mentioned sentient plants as a call to action. I don't have this adventure queued up, but I do have another Campestri-based adventure where the call to action is the party is wandering down the road, and there's like a lady on the side of the road, really sad, with a broken wagon wheel, and she needs some help. And while the party's helping her get her wagon wheel fixed, she's like, oh, by the way, I'm a choir director, and my like choir of Campestries all wandered off while I was trying to fix the wagon wheel because I couldn't pay attention to them, and they're dumb. They just do that. They just wander off, and I need, while I'm taking care of the wagon, I need you to go get my choir back, so that, because I have a performance in the town down the road, and I need like all of my singing Campestries. So the party has to go into the woods and like save Campestries from themselves. Like one of them has decided to go make friends with a wyvern. And like hopped up into its nest and is trying to talk to it, and the wyvern's trying to decide how it's going to eat this thing. And like a handful of barbarians get their hands on a couple of them and are like they're already tripping off on drugs, and they're like, these mushrooms already talk. I can only imagine what will happen once we dry these out and try to smoke them or something. It's going to be great. And then like some others have gotten lost doing other things, but you eventually get all of them back. And she's like, yeah, we're going to perform this song that we just picked up from like a weird guy in like another town. And as a reward, we will perform for you, because you saved all of my Campestry. And like the choir does its thing, but the song is actually like a song that summons a demon. But she didn't know that. She just picked up like this weird sheet music from this weird guy in like the previous town, and he was like, yeah, it's gonna totally summon a demon and wreck that other town south of us. But he didn't tell her, and so then the party has to fight a demon at the end. But
it's like such a cute adventure that leads to just...
Yeah, it's just a very cute and wholesome, like, save the weird little mushroom guys, and then it ends in, oh, and you also have to fight a demon.
Well, and it's just like, so I've got a Campestry related situation as well, where a party happens to be going down a road and they approach a bridge, but a Campestry is camping that bridge and jumps out. And this Campestry is a little more gifted than your average Campestry. It's been blessed with more intelligence, so it's actually
someone actually cast like a waken up plant on it or something.
Essentially, I won't go into whole detail about everything about this guy, just because you know I still run the thing. But his name's Harry Shrooman, after everybody's favorite president. And he gives the party these questions, and they're all riddles, of course, and they have to get a majority of them right. Pass. If they don't pass, they can pay him, or if they want to fight him, he has some friends amongst the trees that are not Campestry, that will do the fighting for him, because Harry Shrooman has a secret service, and so. But if the characters, if our party gets through this, in talking further with this Campestry, they find out a lot of things about his backstory, and what this ends up leading to is he was trying to find his family, and the last thing he knew is that there was a mushroom people civilization under a nearby mountain range. And if the party follows down this, they will eventually discover there is a myconid civilization under this mountain range. But because of all the differences in, what they are, they're very phobic. They're very afraid of outsiders. They haven't seen a non-myconid, other than, any kind of creature that happens to find its way that deep into the cave, in a long time. And the party can... Essentially, it becomes a diplomacy quest where the nearby town can end up allying together if things go well, of course. And it's all essentially like mediated by our party. And instead of the party ending up fighting the goblins that they were trying to get to when they met Harry Shrooman, the Myconids end up taking care of it for them. So then it ends up tying back into the goblin adventure that we're on in the first place.
I can't get over that name.
I love Harry Shrooman. And he becomes, of course, he's got a bit of an attitude. Like, I picture him as like, he's like he grew up on he not necessarily on the streets because again he's looking for his family, and there's like more story behind that as well and things like that where he can find stuff. But he ends up becoming this cute little mascot guy for them because he can't do a whole lot. But he's sassy and he speaks mostly in riddle, which is just so annoying and I love it. But yeah.
Oh, I see. That's where the answer me these questions 3.
Yeah, answer me these questions 3. And like I like went and found a bunch of like well, not necessarily difficult, but like the ones where like if you don't get the answer, you're fuck, you know. But yeah, it's the first time I didn't even know about sentient mushrooms or plants at all in D&D until I started working on this, because originally I think I legitimately put a troll under the bridge.
Yeah.
But I was like, this is like
a normal place for you to find a troll.
Yeah, exactly, right? But I was like, what's more fun and original? And I was sentient plants, because we're in a forest. And there's like mycelium about, like there could be mushrooms growing, and I was like, what if there are mushroom people? Now, of course, Campestry and myconids, they kind of don't necessarily just exist in a generic woods, which is then why they get their backstories and why they are.
Yeah, the Campestry more traditionally from the Feywild, and the myconids
exactly.
more traditionally like an Underdark or other.
Precisely. So it's like, what are they doing? Yeah, what are they doing in this realm? And there's like entire story that goes to that, but you know, the Olympics is going to be coming around eventually, right? So we don't have that much. I don't know if we're going to get to that time.
I had forgotten to say that for my goblin that does all this mushroom stuff, she also wears a hat that is legitimately a mushroom hat. So
that's like, very good.
It is a mushroom cap, and she literally takes off the hat, bites into it, and uses Druidcraft to regrow it as she gets home. It is fantastic. That's what I do. The DM is like, what is your character going to do? And she's uncomfortable in almost every situation, so she just slowly takes off the hat. And you just hear this small little crunch. She puts it back on and casts Druidcraft, and then her eyes just whoop. And then I roll like a d6, and I'm like, all right, she goes that direction. And, and the party's just like, we gotta follow her again. She follows some kind of colorful butterfly, and it's always good because I always let the DM kind of like use her as like a foxhole / like way to lead the party a certain way.
Right,
so
right.
It's a lot.
Like
of
for
fun.
some reason, that butterfly you're chasing does lead the party right where I want them to go.
Yes, that's what I've used it for. I've like worked with the DMs on this. I'm like, she will go a direction. You can choose it to do any direction you see fit. If you want them to follow her and go a particular way, just let it happen. So, like, I love doing it with that character.
So, as far as plant-based monsters, we'll get to here in a bit, but, like, just normal non-monster-based plants used in adventures, you could, again, collection quests, we all know how these work. We've all played your RPGs where they're like, hey, we need you to go get this thing. But also, sometimes the parties want to, or players in your party want to do weird things in their downtime. You know, where it's like, hey, I want to craft this thing. And your first, instinct as a DM is to probably say, no, we got better things to be doing. But also, if you're a yes and kind of person, then you tend to give them some options, but maybe give them a cost associated with that. Like, sure, you can do that, but you're going to have to acquire these materials to do that. So if the assassin in your party is like, oh, I need some assassin poison, you're like, well, you can't just go down to the corner market and buy deadly assassin poison. They don't just stock that on the shelf. Which gives you a good out to be like, would you like to go get the deadly nightshade? I hear that you can only harvest it in utter darkness. Or, whatever. And then make them go out and have kind of like a side quest. Now, yes, this does kind of pad your adventure a little bit, but that's okay. That gives the party time. It gives them a little bit to kind of build a more buy-in to their character because they went out and got that poison, because they went out and got that material. And there was a fun little adventure that went along with that you could also maybe throw in an NPC here and there, or maybe in addition to that weird like plant they had to go pick up, roll on the trinket table, and maybe they find, like while they're robbing the grave that the deadly nightshade was growing out of, they happen to find a weird trinket, or something that could mean nothing, or if the party kind of latches onto it, could become part of a growing bit of your adventure. Same thing with like if your wizard wants to make like some healing potions or something, be like, well, you're gonna have to go get some good berries, but not the kind that druids just hand out for free. You're gonna have to go find where they actually grow. Which may mean that you need to go talk to a druid, convince them to tell you where they actually grow.
Oh, and that can be a little bit.
And then you might need to do
easy.
something for the druid. Who knows? But these are interesting kind of add-ons that can kind of add to the flavor of your game. Maybe the party isn't. Speaking of flavor of a game, there is an adventure that I have that's a little one-shot that is 100% a Iron Chef cooking competition. And you have to. There are mini games involved in sourcing your ingredients, because they don't just have them sitting there waiting for you. They're like, this is what you need to cook. You will need to cook it tomorrow. Have all of your ingredients ready. Best of luck. And you have to like go out into the wilderness and source your ingredients. And there's like mini games involved for getting all of the particular ingredients that you would need to properly cook your dish. And if you don't get all of those ingredients, then the dish is much harder to cook on the cooking day and causes new challenges for you during that portion of the adventure.
Jesus.
Or you have to use like substandard ingredients, or like swap in for not quite right ingredients, or and all of these add to the difficulty or cause some kind of challenge based on what you're cooking. So yeah, when you're dealing with weird plants and materials in your D&D games, all of a sudden you too could have an Iron Chef cooking competition as part of your D&D adventure, because now you've kind of brought that into the game as an option that wasn't there before.
Truly. I agree with that. And it's also like, they don't even necessarily have to always... The plants themselves don't even always have to be the story either. You do... It's so easy to do environmental storytelling with environment, go figure. But like, it's like, everybody knows the whole, like, when somebody brings up D&D, especially in media, the thing that's, you're in a forest. Well, sometimes that forest changes to some other kind of... Maybe something happened in a forest that's important for your adventure. Well, the plants change. Your trees are now burnt and dead looking. Or
something happened here.
It's like, or the bushes mysteriously don't have any leaves, but the plant still seems to, be full of life. Or some, literally any kind of thing, it's just like...
No one ever really considers what an area looks like after a party before you had cast Fireball on the goblins.
Exactly. Like, it's just, it allows, and exactly, it also allows for there to be, like, more of an idea of consequence. Because, like, yeah, sure, your Fireball definitely took out that little, that goblins, but now the forest is on. So what are we gonna do about that? It's
what if that village like used that part of the forest to forage for important like materials?
It's like, or what if you're on farmland?
Yeah, that too. What if you set a farm on fire?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, like that's a thing that can happen in one of my other adventures. Like this tavern that they start out at is in a farm town. Like if they go and they do some other stuff, there's like they're just in wheat fields. So no fire. If you use fire, the farmer's gonna get, and you get banished from the town whether you win.
Yeah, that definitely puts a wrinkle. Like there's an environmental challenge that kind of puts a wrinkle in an adventure,
Right.
because you don't, you know, if you ruin their entire livelihood while saving their lives, are,
It's the
are they
Avengers
required to
conundrum.
be happy with you?
Right.
Exactly. It's just like, okay, you killed the, angry monster guys, but also I'm not going to feed my family for the next 3 years, so I don't know if it was really worth it, guys. So yeah,
Yeah, I'm
it
gonna have
just
to abandon my farm anyway.
yeah, like it allows it like without the DM having to actually restrict anything, it allows the party to have to think a little bit differently than maybe they normally would, especially
Right.
if you have a known murder hobo in your group and you're just like, well,
Yep.
you can't win if you do your normal shtick. You know what I mean?
Or a known like arsonist in your party.
Let's not point any fingers.
No,
I know people
looking
who do
directly
that.
at Sasha.
I did not do that. I twin casted Fireball one time to get myself out of a spell that I was stuck in. And she warned everybody beforehand.
That's fair. But no, we have definitely Sasha and I have definitely played adventures with pyromaniacs who are like,
Yes.
I am taking a spellcasting class. I will take literally everything that does fire damage, and I will point it at every enemy or things around
Yes.
enemies. I don't care. Fire.
Exactly. It's true. It's
Like,
true.
I mean, I won't even lie.
Seriously true.
I probably use the firebolt cantrip more than any other spell that I've ever
Yes.
used ever. Just because it always works, even when something's
It does.
strong against
There's always
it.
that sentence at the end where it will light unattended things on fire.
Yeah, and it's
Yes.
just that fixes a lot of problems really quickly.
Yes, it does.
It can cause other problems, which is why our plants come back in.
Right.
'Cause, once again, you don't want to destroy the entire environment. You don't always want to destroy.
Right. It's an ecological disaster.
Yeah,
You don't want that.
unless the forest you're in happens to be like a lich's phylactery. But they don't
Yeah.
usually.
It's a little extra work, I think.
that feels like the lich is just being a bit extra at that.
You're like, the whole forest? And he's like,
really? Like,
the whole forest.
I wanted foliage in my yard.
The whole forest.
It's very pretty. I like to go for walks and strolls when I'm home. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, so that's...
Uprooting plants and moving.
So, yeah,
Maybe
Sasha,
that
you,
shrubbery
as
over
a,
there.
as a person who will soon be running an adventure that plants
Yes.
will involve heavily, how are you, now that you've had the adventure I gave you as kind of like a little template as an idea of how to go, how do you plan on, or has that changed your design from your previous?
The one that adventure does adds in that extra amount of like not only urgency, but also it adds in that extra like threat level on top of it. So I kind of had it where they were dealing with these like essentially like large cryptid type monsters, and so they're pretty much gathering ingredients. Like none of them are here, so I can say this on here. But like essentially they're going to go for like these particular ingredients. So, like the particular ingredients are, we need a leviathan tentacle, and there's going to be a fishing mini game that's going to cause that to come out. So during the fishing mini game, if like somebody rolls like a 100%, they're going to get the tentacle without even having to fight the monster, but that's only if they get 100%, and they get like the absolute highest capacity they can do, which is very rare. And there's other ones where if they roll really low, it'll just drag out the monster, and then they have to. There's that. There's a giant mushroom they have to cut down, which is actually a treant. So they're gonna be, they're gonna start hacking away, and all of a sudden they're gonna be like, "The fuck?" And then someone just gets launched across the room because it got kicked by a treant. And so like there's that. So there's like a wood cutting game, and like they're all gonna get like little trinkets or little doodads and stuff to kind of earn it and get some money or whatever. And and that kind of thing. And there's some other ones. I think I had another couple of ones. I'm still planning monsters. There's one that's going to be for sure like a live plant that, besides not the mushroom, but like there's going to be like a live plant, like a
an
giant
awakened plant of some kind.
Yeah, an awakened pumpkin, and they have to get like that. Excuse me, that pumpkin head. And there's that other stuff because that has to be used as like the bowl to put everything in. and I have like a list. I've actually made. Yes.
You're just making like tentacle gumbo.
It's the most fucked up Halloween I've ever been a part of.
Yes. Yeah, and it's a Halloween overnight, so that's why I was like, this is gonna be perfect.
It's perfect.
So, like, I made. Let's see. I put big enemies to fight a big spider. I'm thinking about putting a lich in there at like higher end stuff because I think I put as an ingredient a lich's femur. So they have to like take the leg and run.
Jesus.
They'll need some dragon scales. They're gonna fight some zombies and some kobolds for like the smaller stuff. And so I was kind of like, but there's also some of those other plant ideas like the mandrakes, the screaming mandrakes in particular, and the ones that like harvesting completely in the dark. That sounds fantastic.
Right.
Because there are things that are just gonna smack them randomly, and they're gonna be like, what the fuck? And so like there's that kind of thing, and then adding the witch involved into it too. So I was like, oh man, does this mean I could make a rival NPC? Oh no, that's gonna be fun. It's gonna be like a rival Brewster maker that has other people and they have to fight off and defend some of the other stuff. So that was like, that gave me so many more ideas on what to do. And my characters are starting out at level 10, and I was just gonna slowly progressively level them as they go, because I'm like, these people, they all came together as they're a group of adventurers. They all bought a bar together, and then the brewmaster's like, hey, we're kind of also an adventuring guild, so I need you to go get some stuff for me because we're gonna have a big holiday celebration for the fall festival, and I need you to go get this stuff. But does not explain that they have to fight big monsters. casually leaves that out. Casually, as she is a goblin, casually leaves that out. Like, she had to be like, we had to fight these huge things, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, oh, sorry, forgot to tell you. It all comes from, like, giant cryptid-style monsters.
Thanks for doing it, though.
Right, one of them's going to be a giant spider, because you need, like, a spider fang. And so, not going to tell them. And so I'm like, almost like a witch's style brew where it's like eye of a newt and like femur of a lich and just like throw it in.
Throw it into the giant pumpkin, stir it up a bit.
Yes, and like mixes it all together, and it's literally like the fruit punch of the of the party. And so that's the whole point of it. And then, like, I figured eventually, once they get all of it, then there's gonna be like I want to plan for like a big boss fight to kind of end the night, or day, depending on how long it goes. Because an overnight is literally we play for as long as we can.
Fair enough.
And we only do that on like holidays and stuff. And I was like, I love Halloween. It's my favorite holiday. It's my favorite thing to do. And so it's like I'm gonna plan to run it this time because I'm still a new DM. I have only DM'd one 5th edition game, and I was like, you know what? I really want to do an overnight, so I'm going to run one this year. And everyone's like, oh my god, she's running it! I was just like, no, I'm not that good. A lot of the times I look at the book and I throw it across the room because I'm like, fuck this is my way.
Good news, you're running the game. That means you're that good.
As the DM, that makes you God.
Yeah.
Because I have one of my good friends would literally like is a rules lawyer like all the time, and he'd be like, but in the book, and I would be the person that grabs the book, the PHB, and just goes. So anyways, this is what happens. And they just be like, but that's not in the rules, and I'm like, but that's not in the rules.
You hear a booming voice from the ether, yo, but that's not in the rules.
That would be me too. But I had a lot of fun running the game that I have, which is very druid themed. It's very much about like druids that kind of took over this world, and they're the ones that kind of handle a lot of stuff, and they have like a big, resourceful turtle that they live on that moves around the world.
That sounds
And
familiar.
yeah, but this one is like a turtle that is um, from the astral sea that one of my
Ooh.
other NPCs found and raised it. And in
Oh.
this world, I have a pantheon, and this same goblin who's like extremely wiser beyond like than she should ever be as a goblin, and like found this loophole where the gods can't actually really interact with mortals and can't really intervene with things happening in the world. So like the gods get mad because they want to be able to like work with them and be their patrons and do all this stuff, and the goblins like, no, you need to leave these people alone and let them live their lives the way they fit. The gods are like, no.
But I wanna.
It's really fun. And yeah, the so like the way that it works is the turtle you can kind of see walking around, but only druids can access the turtle. And there's ways that they only druids can access and you can only get into. And it's kind of like transports you into a different world.
So like
it's
like pass through plants kind of spells.
yeah,
But
kind of sort of.
but the other side is like a turtle.
Yeah, and the turtle walks around.
Or like a
and
tree
people are
on the growing on the back of the turtle.
Yeah, and people are like, how did they, how does the turtle, like, how do people not feel the turtle? I was like, okay, well, when it moves, it just goes to the ethereal plane and then walks around and then comes back out on the other side.
But yeah, no. Speaking of that, plant-based spells that don't get enough attention, that plant walk, druid spell where it's kind of, it's like you want to teleport, you want a dimension door. Those are all kind of flashy, but you know what's really cool? Walking into a tree and walking out like literally anywhere else in the world.
As long as you know the location.
Yeah, as long as you know where that tree is.
It is so good. And I like that because we used that when I was Saza. And we used that when we were in the dungeon and there was a tree. And I had a tree that was right next to
the manor.
mansion.
Yeah, the manor
The
that you guys
Trollskull
did.
Manor.
Because you guys did the Dungeon of the Mad Mage. And there are a few floors in that dungeon where there are whole forests.
Yes.
And you
where
can.
my character got traumatized. Yes.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
But yeah, so like, there are a lot of plant-based spells in D&D that do not get a lot of play. I mean, druids always, a druid always has a good berry. It's one of their main like little healing spells.
Yeah, and you can. I like with the plants that you can the favorite plant like spells you can like flavor them how you want to.
But like rangers get at least a couple of like hazard plant-based spells where they can make the terrain like difficult and damage you if you walk on it, or if they like shoot with an arrow, like plants grow out of it like vines and like wrap you up and restrict you. Those also do not get a lot of airtime in games, mostly because the rangers are like, well, I hunter's marked it, that's good enough. Hiya! Shoot! And I'm just like, well, I guess that's fine. I guess you got.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Transport via plants, so unused. I didn't even know it existed. But that would essentially just break the first half of one of the adventures I played.
Right.
I used it as soon as I got that spell. It was like I think it's called like Tree Stride or whatever.
It's something like that. I don't remember. Again, it's so unused. I don't.
Yeah, the spell is called Transport via plants.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I used it. I used it because that's how we had like this talking sword that we ripped out of a dragon's head, and so we had it, and like we made an agreement with the sword that I would get it out of the dungeon, and I don't remember after that, but I remember I was like, oh, I transported out of the dungeon through a tree into a tree that was right in front of the manor, and then like the tree was like, all right, stab me into the tree, and I was like, okay, proceeds to do that, and the tree just disappeared, and I think the tree did the same thing that my character did. It did the same thing. That was
the intelligent sword that like arguably the party gets if they pull it out of the head of like a angry green. Well, it's a very nice green dragon. And then if you take the sword out, the problem was the sword was like imposing its will on the dragon. It had gotten buried in the dragon's head during a fight with like a dragon slayer a long time ago, and it was an intelligent sword, and it overrode like the personality of the dragon. So it was a very nice dragon until the party's like, that's a high powered intelligent sword. We want that sword. And then they try to get the sword out, and when the sword gets out, then you have to fight the dragon because it's not a nice dragon anymore. And then the sword's like, I don't like you people. I would like to leave. And in the way the adventure traditionally works, because the party just killed like a good dragon that the sword was rehabilitating. So the sword does not like them.
Yep, we did.
But
but
eventually, like the way it's supposed to work is you're supposed to like drag the sword with you along your way, and eventually maybe it'll like you, or it'll like keep trying to take over the party and get its way. But Sasha like immediately short circuited that entire like sub quest line by being like, sure, you can go back up to the surface. I don't care, and just like plant transported him back up to the surface, and he's like, great, now I can do whatever I want, and he like teleported away.
Yeah,
amazing. Jesus Christ.
So great.
I know this is about plants, but there are so many sentient assholes in D&D now.
Oh yeah.
Like every sentient, I've come across a lot of sentient swords, and they're all assholes. They're all jerks. I don't know what it is.
Well, the problem is
made sentient things that are just
a lot of the time. Not to get too far off topic, but a lot of the time, when it comes to sentient things, they have a goal, and it is always a goal that is not the party's original goal, and so they're always struggling with the party. So they always come off as like the asshole in this situation, and when like from the sword's perspective, it's got a job and it just wants to do that job.
That's fair. Honestly, that's fair.
Reddit, is the sentient clay pot the asshole?
Does narcissism come with sentience?
Maybe. But no, when it comes to sentient plants, so there is the druid spell Awaken plant, and there are. It is a thing that happens in adventures as an inciting incident that druids are just going around casting Awaken on things and using them at, evil druids are occasionally, casting Awaken on various plants and using them as their minions to cause some problem. Or you have an awakened plant that has wandered away from its master and can become like the party's mascot of some kind. I have had a party that has wandered around with a awakened bush. It doesn't talk. It doesn't have a mouth. It's a bush. It just follows them around and shakes its leaves angrily. But that's how it gets its point across. But there's stuff like that. But then there's also your more sentient monster plants. And again, and this is an instance of using plants as dual purpose. There are like the twig blights, which are just a pile of twigs. Your needle blights, your twig blights, depending on if you needle blights for ranged attacks, twig blights are more physical attackers. But they're just basically piles of twigs, right? Well, I've run adventures, a Christmas adventure, definitely, where there was decor, like Christmas decor, your wreaths, your like garlands, your whatever, that were basically twig blights and needle blights in hiding. They had kind of like curled up into wreaths and like the town was like, I don't know, these wreaths keep showing up and it's Christmas time, so somebody keeps leaving them here. And they just kept putting them on like all the doors in their house. Yeah. And then like on Christmas night, like all of the wreaths came alive and started attacking the town.
I love that idea too, like the town Christmas tree, like the big one.
Well, yeah, the town Christmas tree is like a tree
made of. Yeah, or like it's just all consistent of like needle blights that have all put together.
I mean, I understand that this sounds like a Doctor Who episode, but
I love it though.
But like
that's the thing.
Like it's like
so great.
it's Christmas in this random town, and your party's visiting, and all these people are putting up all these wreaths, and you're like, man, where do you guys keep getting these wreaths? And we're like, we don't know. They just keep showing up here in town, and we keep putting them up.
That's so good.
And then, like, at the stroke of midnight on Christmas, all of a sudden, all of them come alive and start raising the town.
The Grinch is the druid responsible for bringing them all.
Kind of. Yeah, something like that. Like, but, I mean, this is, again, plants as environmental decor and also your monster.
Like, God, dude.
You can do both. But treants also come up often in adventures. They are multiple things. They can be your random tree that the party messes around with and then finds out that was maybe a bad idea. They can be the old wise tree that has been around forever that the party has to go talk to and negotiate with in a sagely way. BB, I understand that you have used a treant in a way. There are treants
that you have to drop heavy bars in order to pass by. Right. So there's a dungeon that I've created, and before you even get, to the entrance of the dungeon, you've got to get through this forest. And where the party arrives, it comes to two paths, and there's signs. It tells you can go this way, and it takes a little bit longer, might be a little bit easier. And the other way, it's covered in leaves. Those leaves are dead, probably pretty crunchy. And the sign says, "Reach the castle door with ease, lest ye were to wake the trees." And so they can sneak, or as I've just tonight learned, they could just break my game and just travel through the fucking thick-ass forest. Because the forest itself is it's so tightly packed that you can't really pass through the forest. You couldn't get your body between any. This is a tight forest. But with that spell, they could just voop to the entrance. So that's something I'll have to reconsider. Or I'll just leave it in there in case they have a druid. But yeah, if they go this way and they don't all sneak past, which I mean, they're not going to be able to, it's a pretty high D. Your rogue might be able, maybe even some other sneakier classes. But this group is a once famous 90s hip hop trio known as Run DM and it is a trio of treants. And if you wake them up, they're not happy about it, and they're not going to let you pass rap battle. So I wrote a rap for the treants. You won't see it tonight, I'm sorry. But it's pre-recorded, has a whole beat and everything. I did the whole 9 yards. It exists. I'll show it to you guys after the cast. But there's a whole, I gave them 16 bars, a proper, rap battle verse. And the party can choose to rap battle. I don't expect a whole lot, especially on the spot like that. Not everybody's a freestyle rapper. I can understand. But if they want to, I might just give them advantage on the check. Maybe just advantage on the check. And if they decide not to, then they can have disadvantage on the check. If they lose or if they, don't get through the roll, they either have to turn around and go the long way, or they can fight the treant. Now, this is a level 6, level 7 party. So 3 treants is a problem.
It is.
It is designed to be do not fight the boys. Turn around if you lose.
This is a hazard, not a combat.
This is exactly. This is I designed it to be the DM can do everything in his power to keep you guys from having to fight the trees. But if they don't, they can fight him. But yeah, there's an entire, and it's just, the whole thing was just designed off of pun Run DM tree. Right. I was that's hilarious. We could have a group of treants. They can rap. So the whole rap is it's got things we were grown from a different seed with a mind for rhyme, and it's the whole rap is just about the fact that they are plants. Also that they're just you got to do better or we'll kill you. But yeah, it's just but because they're trees, especially in the dark setting, among essentially of course it's built in Tailspire, so I have to kind of work with the assets that I'm given. But in idea and the theater of the mind, these essentially blend in until they're woken up. Of course, when they wake up, then their eyes open, things are glowing. They're what's the word I'm looking for? They're luminescent.
Oh, yes.
And stuff like that. So you could definitely tell, who they are and where they're standing. And usually the one that wakes them up is already among all three of them. So
like right in the middle.
Yeah, he's there. Like there's two of them are behind, one's in front. So you're in trouble if you decided to say to you. But yeah, it's another one of those things where, okay, we're in it would be really weird for me to just put, some random dude that's just in the trees when I already told the party that you can't get through the trees. So how would something... but if it was a tree itself, I was like... and I mean, of course, the other way, things to fight, some skeletons that are out there. There's some shambling mounds. We got some shambling mounds. It's all like super low level to the door. So while this is the faster run.
So shambling mounds, interesting pile of plant. I still do not 100% understand why shambling mounds are immune to lightning. That
is weird, right?
It is a weird oddity that I do not get. Yeah. But it's a thing.
I will say, and in this adventure, I don't really recognize that as the DM. Like, it's like if they're gonna shoot lightning, especially if like somebody has like chain lightning or something.
Well, I usually see them in adventures where the hazards of the room are lightning based.
Right.
It's kind of like where like similar to like a flesh golem, where the flesh golem is healed by lightning. So you always tend to fight it in a room where lightning happens more than once.
Right.
To occasionally heal, you have to solve for that problem, and then also,
right.
Shambling Mounds seem to be like the junior varsity version of a flesh golem, because they're lower CR. They don't actually get healed by the lightning, but they're also not hurt by it. So you could use like low level lightning damage as like a room hazard, and then the shambling mound isn't affected. But as far as plant-based monsters go, just because while D&D does have a mildly impressive list of plants that are also monsters, do not feel that you have to be constrained by those.
Right, of course.
You can find some really creepy looking plant art monsters online. And all you have to really do is take a monster that you already want to hurt your party with and just reskin it as a plant.
Make it smart and narcissistic. Don't forget the narcissism.
But as I've posted in our screen window here, this is what happens when you type fantasy plant monster into Google. And I want you to know that this monster terrifies me, but I want to use it so bad.
Like, honestly, yes.
Because it looks really creepy. It has like thorn whip arms, like praying mantis style. It's got what it looks like it shoots a laser out of the head, like flower. And then has like all kinds of poisonous spines and claw. Oh man, I'm gonna turn this into a monster and use it on somebody someday. It's gonna be great.
That thing's gonna do some hella piercing damage.
But it allows you to take a common monster and describe it in plant terms, like describe it in weird ways, because a lot of these games may not be visual. They may be very theater of the mind. So the more you describe a monster like it with weird non-human or animal conforming parts, the stranger the image your party's going to get in its mind of what they have to tangle with. And you can be like, I don't know, it's got like a barky exterior and a weird rose head with a glowing orb inside, and its thorns drip with a weird sap that, and they're just like, what are we fighting?
It's like, good lord.
I don't.
You drop straight into Pokemon.
Right.
Right.
But this is an option where you can just, you know, just a different caliber of monster to your adventure, especially if your party's used to just fighting normal monsters over and over, and you're like, let's take a different path. Let's visit the plant world and all of the weird and creepy things that happen in the world of plants, where you have that like plants that have strange mimicry powers, or odd poisons that are not quite like venoms of normal animals. You have to deal with rashes instead of like, you know, deadly poison coursing through the veins. Like it spreads across your skin like poison ivy.
Oh my god.
And maybe
that would be crazy.
And maybe like causes disadvantage on, like, if you like your armor starts to chafe on this blistering skin. So now you got to take off your armor or else it's going to cause problems.
Right.
Man, we love plants. God.
I do. I
God.
actually.
Homies love a plant.
In real life, despite me having a black thumb, I do really.
Yeah, like honestly.
I have killed plants I never thought I'd kill before. I have friends that are like, they're like, how the heck did you manage to like completely obliterate this plant that is like almost literally impossible to die? And I was like, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I followed the instructions and I something messed up.
Well, it's like plants are just so necessary to real life too anyway. And it's just like, yes, like of course, you know, the worlds of D&D or tasks are different and sometimes strange, but there's plants of some kind everywhere. Like even if it's not in the same way that we think. Like so it's they get overlooked a lot, but like plants have so much to do with where you are. And sometimes plants can be the only inkling of where you. Right. So it's like even in Moyle, we went through Moyle and Tomb of Continuation, and it's like there wasn't necessarily plant life there, but there was something that resembled plants, and it affected you.
Right.
Like, and it was just like, so it's just no matter where you are, they're there.
Mm-hmm. They set the tone.
Exactly, and it's worth it to mention that they exist. Because you can't, the world wouldn't exist anyways without its own ecosystem. And some people, like, of course, you know, there's, you know, you're going to have your face value people who's like, I don't really care about the rest of the information. But then you have the people, I mean, even just like me. Like, it's just, the more information you give me, the more interested I am.
Right.
Yeah, it grounds you in the adventure, in the world. To kind of, you know, be able to imagine what that's like. You're walking by a forest. Well, yeah, you can walk by any forest, but if you walk by a forest of specific kinds of trees, you can mention like the scent of the flowers, various different, you know, rustles of grasses in the wind. You know, it paints a more complete picture of kind of the area that you're traveling through, and maybe even hints to some information, or if it doesn't hint to the information later when it makes sense that it should have, the party could have looked back and went, oh yeah, you did mention these plants did this thing, and that makes sense now that we're being attacked by this thing that, you know, caused this, you know, mix up with the plants from before, you know, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, I don't know exactly the point I'm trying to make that hasn't already said.
Right, it's fine.
Yeah. Like it's like I'm agreeing with you 100%. I would just end up being rewording exactly what you just said. But yeah, it's just you need them. They're necessary. Whether you want to make them sentient or not, put them in. You know, and like, and then if you can make some of them sentient, do something with that.
I've also tended to. Usually, whenever I put a lot of plants into it, I like to throw a lot of fae mixed in with it. I actually had recently with my campaign, which they just found out some glorious story stuff, so I'm really excited. But anyways, they had encountered a witch, and the witch was like in a classic scene. She had an old beat up cottage, and it was all destroyed. Everything just looked murky, not very pleasant to be around. So kind of like what you consider like a witch or a hag, like that mean evil side. But what they found out before, because there's a lot of evil fae there that had thrown the party out of the glade / swamp because they didn't want them there, or else they were going to kill them. The party's like, we should probably go because there's a lot of them out there. They're heading this way, as a way for me to get the players to get out of place to move on. And so, anyways, before that, they found out that it was a glade. It was beautiful type forestry, and the cottage was very nice and neat that she built herself. And she just stayed there. She had her own little gardens, and she had her own thing. Like, it was really a really beautiful place. I can't remember the inspiration I had from it was what's that board game? Talisman.
Oh, Talisman.
Yeah, there's the expansion that's like the Enchanted Forest expansion, and there's a glade in there, and that image itself actually gave me an inspiration for it. So it's kind of mysterious, but it's still like beautiful. They're seeing all these eloquent flowers, they're seeing all these wonderful places, and then that's before, and then after it just turned into a swamp. And it was horrible and unpleasant because of the like corruption that's
So change in environment definitely like a trigger.
Yeah, and they have it. There's actually what's considered kind of like a plague that's kind of happening, but it's happening on like more open-ended areas. A lot of farmlands are getting hit, and a lot of like non-big city places. It's kind of like they're getting like this black sickness, and they're dying from it. And one of my characters, one of my PCs, his backstory is that he had a fiance, and she was a healer, and she was trying to heal the small village that they were in, passing away from that same sickness. So it is very interesting, and that inspiration came from, believe it or not, Netflix Dark Crystal show.
Okay.
So like they never continued it, and it was a good show. I loved it.
It was expensive.
I wanted more.
It was beautiful.
It was expensive, but
it's
it was
Netflix.
It was Netflix.
It was a fantastic show. It was such a good show.
It's got to get Amazon Prime's.
Right? Amazon Prime's just been like, all right, we're just gonna take all.
Yeah, we'll take all the good stuff and pay
the
them.
money. Give me the license. Okay, and these are ours now. Like, but anyways, that's neither here nor there. But like, there's a whole kind of like thing that's going on where things that are happening kind of like inside like planet / land it's like being corrupted from the inside out. So it's something that the party hasn't really figured out yet, but they're starting to pick it up, and they're picking up pieces, and they're starting to kind of understand. It's really focused around the druids, and the druids are like, no, that's bad corruption, we need to get rid of that. So that's kind of part of it. And I have a whole other thing where the druids I have from there are also similarly inspired by Mass Effect with the flotilla. I don't know if anybody's played Mass Effect before, but there is a group that they have a flotilla, and they go out on pilgrimages to gather resources, gather information, gather any type of thing to help the flotilla, because they're on limited resources, and the druids are frugal in that function, so that way they don't detriment the world around them. They keep themselves as focused as possible and as frugal as possible. So druids, when they're strong enough, so level 1, they'll go out, and they go out on a pilgrimage. So they can go find resources to help, maybe better defenses for the turtle, maybe find, oh, there's a new plant that's not on here, that's not in our area, that we can grow and we could research. And there's some other stuff where like, hey, I found this illness that's down there, maybe I've got some things that can figure it out, and that kind of thing. So like, that's pretty much what it is that I've done. Like, they figure out whatever they can to help benefit the group as a whole, and then when they finish their pilgrimage, then they can go, they can stay, they can leave, they can do whatever.
Neat.
So Yeah, I've got a lot of stuff in there that all just came from up here. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't. There's stuff that I inspired by it, and I was like, oh, I really like this, so this is how I'm going to do this, and then I don't write down half the shit
That's like if I'm like working on like any kind of storytelling thing, I do the same kind of thing. Like I have to have more than one notepad document because as soon as I start working, like again, like the Harry Shrewman situation was just supposed to be a random encounter on the way to the goblins, and then I was like, what if? And then like I was playtesting, and somebody was like, what if we had Harry Truman come on as like a friend him? And I was like, okay. And then I was starting to write like what do you do? And I was like, okay, well what the hell is he bridge? And then I was like, I gotta give him a backstory. And because I gave him a backstory, oh well now I have this entire other adventure.
Yeah.
And then it became that. And it just branches off like that. Like every time I think about something, if I need to go into detail, it becomes its own adventure.
Yeah.
Like all of this talk, now I'm like I have a new thing. Like as soon as this finishes, I'm very likely going to start writing some more stuff because like I have this fantastic idea.
This is also in my game, but it goes against a random enemy that I call Cutlery Short Knife, who is a
Nice.
stout halfling that gave himself the name because he has a throne of literally like spoons, forks, knives, kitchen knives,
Game of Thrones
any type
style.
of like kitchen, yes, and like any type of thing. And like if he gets a new one that he likes but he's not gonna use, he just like stabs it into the chair and just leaves it in there. And it's so great. But he calls himself Cutlery Short.
That's so good. I've got a bugbear, and he's like super overweight. Like he loves. His name is Fat Little Blubbergut. but he's not a plant, so we don't
Right.
have to talk about
so any final thoughts on plants? We can start to wrap this up. I think
they are a fantastic tool and resource for you because you can transmute them into practically anything that you do, and you can use them for storytelling. You can use them for decorative type stuff, but more importantly, plants are actually extremely versatile, especially in D&D.
Yeah. Environmental storytelling is storytelling. It's important, and it takes some of the work off of the DM, because the world can do some of the work for you as long as you're willing to put the work into the world. And so just use your non-sentient stuff to help you tell the story for you, so you don't have to do all the work, and also like use your sentient stuff. Put some monsters in the woods that aren't just your normal goblins or like your weird skeleton that's near the crypt and stuff. Like use piles of bushes, make them into shambling mounds or and stuff like that. But then also have plants are resources in the real world just as they're in D&D. So just like you were saying at the very beginning, Ben, it's just like fetch quests are fetch quests, and fetch quests are real. And sometimes fetch quests are fun. And let plants do that for you. There's so many options.
My final thought, DMs, give your party a non-verbal awakened shrub as a party member. Because first off, it's adorable. Secondly, it's a plant. And thirdly, because it's nonverbal, you have to describe how it's expressing itself as a plant would.
Yes.
That gets you to think in ways that maybe you hadn't thought before of how nonverbal communication might work for things that do not have faces or anything like that. I have definitely run a game where the party's pet was a awakened shrub, and it couldn't talk.
I love that.
It didn't have a face. It didn't have a mouth. It was just a shrub that got up and walked around on its little roots.
That's so
I don't think I was in that game when you had that.
It was great. It's great being able to try to express plant-based emotions to people who aren't plants. It gets people thinking about, and just in a social, way, it gets people to think about nonverbal communication more in ways that they hadn't maybe considered it before, especially when interacting with people that they might in the real world who struggle with nonverbal communication or struggle picking up nonverbal communication skills. It's a fun way to kind of be a sounding board or training tool for people who are not that social to be able to express things toward something that doesn't have a face.
That's
Yes,
fair.
that is true.
That's good thinking.
So, but with that aside, I think we should probably call it about now. We've talked plants for quite some time.
It's been good plant time.
It's been quite a lot of plants. But thank you all for hanging out with us this evening and or watching this later when it drops on YouTube. For those of you who want to hang out with us, we have a Discord link down below, and or we have your Instagrams, your Facebooks, I believe still, whatever Twitter is calling itself and or immolating itself as at the moment. Any other socials that are linked below, you'll find us there. It'll be great times. If you do hang out on our YouTube, go watch all of our back content. We have a lot of back content now, as we are now, about 3 or 4 campaigns deep in things, plus this previous episodes of Tavern Talk, where we discuss all kinds of fun things. Other than that, if you happen to like what we do, feel free to like us and or subscribe to us. If you happen to be a Twitch Prime subscriber or Amazon Prime subscriber, congratulations, you can hand out 1 free sub. And if you haven't handed it out to anyone yet and you would like to hand it to us, that would be cool. It would allow us to have a little bit more funding to do a little bit cooler things. We recently got paid not too long ago from our things, and we paid out some people to do cool things, and it was nice. So more of that would be appreciated. But otherwise, just hanging out with us and liking and sharing, telling your friends about us would be great too. But other than that, thanks for hanging out with us again. We will see you all basically as we do next month. We tend to do this 3rd Tuesday of every month. Topic will be posted here eventually, what that next one will be. And if you want to influence what that might be and you happen to be on the Crit Cats Discord, you can definitely post in our Tavern Talk discussion and maybe come up with some ideas of what you want to hear about. Or if you hang out with us and are cool, maybe you might be able to participate. Who could say? But definitely come hang out with us. It'll be great. Other than that, we will talk to y'all later. Bye.
Bye.